if you were to go bottom up, making it green, 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 green all the way up, you would actually delay the point at which you start making money. So you need to get all 13 to amber, and then you have flow. You have money to reinvest.
Yeah, and I remembered from listening to that podcast where the idea for the mail shot had come from. And he was talking about with HomeServe, they have maintained a focus for many, many, many years of physical mailing out to prospective customers when everyone else pulled away.
Yeah.
And he's saying that even now,
there's a long tail on that.
Redemption, if you like, on that is as high as it's ever been.
Yeah. Where do you start, Brian? Forgotten customers. What's the most common red leak, Bryony? Forgotten customers.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think people can get complacent, and I think my agency background, I worked at Acosta for 10 years, as we talked about. The simple fact was that you had recurring contracts over a 3-year basis. You had to always be nurturing those clients really attentively.
But there will also be times when people let you down. I've had that happen too. I've been very sorely hurt and let down and badly ripped off. I think I don't think there will be a business owner who's had more than a decade in business that hasn't had some of those tough times too.
And so if I go back all the way to 2008 and I think about the last sort of 18 or so years, if you could teach yourself in 2008 one lesson about what you would have done differently or what you would do differently starting your own business now, what would that be? What's the biggest lesson you've probably learned? Join me for another episode of the Commercial Confidence Podcast. Hear from Bryony Thomas, the author of Watertight Marketing, on the principles that she teaches, the benefits of consistency, and ultimately how the lessons can be learned by any marketeer and any sales professional in any industry. Welcome to the podcast. Bryony, thank you so much for sparing us some time in the Five Valleys on the edge of the Cotswolds.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, really, really pleased. As I think I said to you before we started rolling, everyone in our business has a copy of your book. Thank you to Stephen Edney, who first introduced me to the book. And from somebody who worked in the corporate world for a long time, has now been working in agencies for the last decade or so, I genuinely would have been a bit lost without some of the guidance in the book. And it's very well thumbed, lots of post-it notes, as you can see. So first and foremost, thank you for writing it in the first place.
Oh, you're so welcome. It makes me so happy to see a well-thumbed copy. And it's fantastic that Stephen is spreading the word. We've worked together for many years, so great to know that he's passing on the wisdom to others.
Absolutely. There were 3 books in his recommendation, and your one was mentioned first.
Excellent.
So that's good. Good
I'll
news.
send him $5.
Or a mug. We'll talk about the mugs a bit later, but absolutely. So talk to us about you, how you came to be in the career that you're in, how Watertight came into being.
Yeah, so my early career was agency side. So initially charity fundraising and then tech. So I left, Mason Zembler was the name of the agency, as the senior account manager on Microsoft. We were doing all the small business marketing for Microsoft in the UK. And I went from there into client-side role with a business that was looking to be acquired. We were about 80 employees when I started, and we sold to Experian. And then so I've gone through that exit kind of succession piece. When the business was bought, my role expanded and I became director of marketing within the marketing services division at Experian. And then in 2008, I left and set up on my own. And I initially started doing talks to promote my business and for my own lead generation. Started drawing all the same diagrams, talking about things in the same way. And myself and my partner, my business partner at the time, Cheryl, we were turning business down about 3 to 1. So for 3 inquiries we could service one of them. And I thought if I just wrote it down, I could at least give them a book.
Absolutely.
And that's how the book was born.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic position to be in when you can be that choiceful early
on. It was incredible.
Yeah,
it was absolutely incredible. And it's interesting because inflation as it is at the moment, what I was able to charge as a day rate then is still considered quite high as a day rate now. And I do think that's very much because I had created a known methodology and a nomenclature, something that I was known for.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's go a layer deeper and talk to us about the principles of watertight marketing. Yeah,
so it's called Watertight Marketing because my publisher wouldn't let me call it Don't Piss Your Money Away. Because that was one of the working titles. And essentially, it's about turning the way that marketing is thought about really on its head. So we think about a customer journey. Often people think about that customer journey forward. So from awareness through to an inquiry, through to a proposal, through to a close, etc. So you think about the journey forwards. And it's great to do that, so to map a journey forwards, but you need to build it backwards. So if you imagine painting yourself out of the room, you need to create that pathway backwards. And then the central analogy, where the water comes in here, is that we separate that journey into 3 parts. So we think about your business being a bucket. Aim of the game, keep the bucket full of water. We all know that it evaporates through tax and overheads and all of that. And every month you've got to keep this bucket topped up. So that's your business. And there are holes in the bucket that a marketing person can plug for you. Then there are funnels and filters, so one layer up, most closely associated with salespeople. What are the ways that you convert interest into that bucket? And then finally at the top there's taps, which is what most people think of as marketing. And so if you think of the customer journey in 3 parts, bucket, funnel and filters, taps, and work bottom up, then you have sales flow through your business.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that it may be by design or default, but one of the ways that we use those 13 leak points, if you like, is if something doesn't go through to conversion or somebody moves on to a competitor, it's post-evaluating what happened there and post-rationalising the leak to then plug it. So we find that really powerful. Really
it's so powerful. So you're referring to the 13 touchpoint leaks, which are introduced in chapter 2 of the book. So there are I researched about 200 companies when I wrote the book. It's up to about 3,500 in that research of all the typical ways that people leave a decision to purchase. And I've aggregated that into 13 touch points where there are tried and tested ways that marketing can provide a tool or a technique that would tick that box, that would plug that leak. And so those 13 touch point leaks are, I would encourage people to do, a marketer might be looking at that on a monthly or 6-weekly basis. A board might be looking at that quarterly or 6 monthly, just throwing up the touch point leaks, doing a red, amber, green, a traffic light, where are we on this? And post-rationalising what was gone before is definitely the place to start.
Yeah.
What did work, what didn't work. Really useful starter.
Absolutely. The other things that we talked about was ultimately, as a perfectionist, and I referenced the mug earlier on, I love the phrase, functional is a milestone en route to world class. I'm somebody who's really, really struggled with, if it's functional, it's okay, because I'm quite tough on myself. What would your guidance and approach be to somebody starting out, going back to where you were in 2008 and getting comfortable with that functional being a step towards world class, good enough?
Yeah, it's. This is the reason it's on a mug and it's on posters in walls of all our clients is that I have to remind myself. I would describe myself as a recovering perfectionist, and the whole point about functional being a milestone is to celebrate when you get from red to amber. So if you had all your touchpoint leaks and they were all amber, then you would be making money.
Yes.
Yeah. So and then you iterate and pull it up to green. If you were to go bottom up, making it green, 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 all the way up, you would actually delay the point at which you start making money. So you need to get all 13 to amber, and then you have flow. You have money to reinvest.
Yeah,
there's a brilliant little snippet from one of our clients, Joe Elliott from Oyster Information Management Systems. He was at our 2018 conference, and he said the first time they did the touchpoint leak assessment, it was all red. And he said, "Oh, get me coat. This is awful." And I said to him, "Well, considering it's all red, does your business make money?" He said, "Yeah."
Imagine the upside
then. Yeah, exactly. Imagine if you just got those reds to amber, because lots of small businesses have made it on sales skill. And what Watertight brings to the party is the marketing tool that complements that skill, so that a salesperson is never starting with a blank sheet of paper. And so if you do the touchpoint leak assessment and find that you have reds and ambers, that's a good thing. That means there's something to squeeze to get more from your effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we look at Selex, and we took the business over 3 years ago now. We're doing pretty well. But that's almost in spite of it being, we were trying to fix everything at once. And the minute I sort of, particularly my business partner really sort of checked me and said, we're trying to do everything here. How do we step back and and build from the bottom up. I started to relate that conversation back to a lot of what I'd been practicing, but trying to do too much on.
And they're the two classic mistakes. So trying to do everything. So you spread yourself very thin. I'm good with all amber. All amber's good. But when you're spreading yourself too thin and actually it's red, that's a problem. Or when you start top down. So the two typical mistakes people make when they're frustrated with the return that they're getting from marketing is either that they're spreading themselves too thin or they're focusing only on the top, which means they're spending money that doesn't convert.
Yeah. And I love the fact, and apology if I'm misphrasing it, but leak number one is almost forgetting about existing customers.
Yes.
I think that's so important, and there is so much choice in the services industry, particularly in what we do. You absolutely have to give new reasons for them to believe, make them aware of new proof points for you as an organisation. And
you got it spot on. Leak one, forgotten customers.
Yeah.
Where do you start, Brian? Forgotten customers. What's the most common red leak, Bryony? Forgotten customers.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think people can get complacent, and I think. Yeah. My agency background, I worked at Acosta for 10 years, as we talked about. The simple fact was that you had recurring contracts over a 3-year basis. You had to always be nurturing those clients really attentively. And it's something that I think I've certainly taken forward is, you've absolutely got to make them
and things flip. I had a really interesting conversation with a client this morning on a coaching call where we were talking about they keep internally, they keep like a favours list. So the clients that they've done additional and value add for, they kind of keep a cost and they have a note of what that is. And I said, well, have you shared that with your client? Because if you're just doing them a favour, how would they know that you've done them a favour? And I said, so all of those little extras that you do for someone, they should show up on your invoice at 100% discount so that you can effective marketing shines a light on the truth. Another one of my mugs. If you're doing someone something like one of the things he does is cover their delivery cost, and often he provides storage space for people. It's like, well, how much would it cost to store their boxes if they were to do that without you? I said, well, that needs to go on your invoice at 100% discount because you've saved them that money. And so when I say forgotten customers, that's the sort of thing I mean. I don't necessarily mean, let's have a customer shindig or let's send them all, some merch or whatever. I mean simple things like when your invoicing goes out, are you aggregating all of the goodwill that you have undertaken for your client in that month so you can say at the monthly account review, and this month we saved you £800 in storage cost.
Absolutely. And that takes me almost right to the end of the book, and we'll move backwards and forwards as we go, but right at the end, the whole thing around an acute focus on return on investment, it's really interesting. We've had a couple of conversations recently where people have said, well, we really, really need you to be really tight on, not on our cost, but on the cost of other ancillary services we needed to bring into a project.
Yeah.
And I had to remind them that we also run our own business, therefore we have an acute focus, and we found some really cost-effective ways to do things. Much larger organisations don't have that pressure, but it's so fundamentally important to measure your ROI on absolutely everything and keep a tight cost on control.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of your marketing needs to be purposeful. So I don't necessarily think you can always draw a straight line between a marketing activity and a sales result. I think you can draw an aggregated and correlated line between a set of activity and an outcome. Sometimes occasionally there are straight lines in marketing, but rarely. But I definitely think that everything you do should be done with purpose and consideration. Yeah. If I were to pull out any of your marketing tools, I should say you should be able to tell me what job does that do, what market does it serve, what needs is it fulfilling, what's the next step. Yeah. And next step is a key thing. This is about journeys. It's about someone always taking the next step in their decision. Absolutely. And so if you pick up a brochure, what's the next step? If you send someone an email, what's the next step? There should always be a next step in your marketing tools.
Interestingly, one of the most effective things we did last year was send a physical paper flyer out to about 200 commercial directors. Bit of a handwritten post-it compliment slip. Hopefully this is something nice to receive in the post, because people just don't receive.
No, I'm doing direct mail with other clients at the moment, and it's really interesting because I also think that the ease of AI in doing things like automated email and outreach on LinkedIn, people it's like wallpaper. And actually, I'm seeing some really good uptake going back to some of the techniques I was using in the early 2000s, back in agency land, where we were sending lumpy mail. physical 3D mail. So one of my clients is Chimpanzees, which is a charity for disabled children. Their logo is a purple monkey. What do you think we're sending people? And so there is that physical touch. It's coming back, and the current crop of sort of middle level marketers have grown up in a social media and a digital world, and I don't think they're as habituated to thinking about physical touch and opportunities to physically shake hands.
Yes, it's almost they think about low friction as opposed to high impact.
Yes, yeah. It's a really good way of putting it. And I think so. I think lots of people, perhaps with marketing advice at the moment, it's all very AI centered. And I think if people can really think, how can I make this more human? There's a real win in that.
Absolutely. Interestingly, Richard Harpin was the founder of HomeServe.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's now stepped away from the business, but he's been on lots of podcasts recently. I was listening to a podcast a few days ago, and I remembered from listening to that podcast where the idea for the mail shot had come from. And he was talking about with HomeServe, they have maintained a focus for many, many, many years of physical mailing out to prospective customers when everyone else pulled away.
Yeah.
And he's saying that even now,
there's a long tail on that.
Redemption, if you like, on that is as high as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because yes, people are more used to using technology, but because less stuff is landing on their mat, they're paying more attention to the stuff that does.
Yeah.
So the redemption hasn't really diminished over time.
Fascinating. It's why I've done the mugs. And like Octopus Energy, I got one of their pink octopuses.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what is it? It's an octopus, of course, Bryony, because it's Octopus Energy. One of their cuddly toys. And it sits in the back of the car. So these are sorts of things that I think people haven't used as much in the last sort of 10 years that are coming back.
Yeah, I think back to when I was a kid, physical Andrex puppies, my grandparents used to collect the PG Tips cards for me, all those things that built, brand affinity and brand loyalty that you don't see now in a physical presence.
Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I go back all the way to 2008 and I think about the last sort of 18 or so years, if you could teach yourself in 2008 one lesson about what you would have done differently or what you would do differently starting your own business now, what would that be? What's the biggest lesson you've probably learned?
The biggest lesson is probably stamina and discipline. So one of the key words in Watertight is consistency. Little and often is much better. Like there's a fitness analogy that runs through the final chapter, and your doctor's going to be much happier with you doing 20 minutes exercise a day than trying to do one marathon on a day a year. And the same is true with your marketing. So and the same is true of any business, running your own business. So for me, I think I would be less focused on big milestone moments and launches, and more focused on consistency and discipline. And I think I have erred in that direction. It's my character, but I think I would probably be prouder of that. I think like many, there are shiny things in the world where people do these big launches and have these big moments, these big kind of peak attention moments. And I've probably been a bit green-eyed when I've seen other business owners doing those sorts of things. But I actually think that my little and often has paid me back better, perhaps, than had I mimicked some of those peak moments.
Yeah, I've definitely found myself doing things that were big bang, but then very quickly, or being tempted to do things that are big bang and then going, hang on a minute, we do not have the resource to do all of the follow-up.
Yeah.
So people have got short attention span, short memory, lots of distractions. They will remember a big bang event, but not for very long.
No.
So how do you stretch that spend?
Yeah, it is. It's so important. I was with a group of estate agents last week, and
tough market at the moment.
Tough market, and they've got the legal changes at the moment that they're facing and all of that. But one of the chaps in the audience was saying one of the key things that it's a real cornerstone of their marketing is that their weekly email goes out on the same day at 5 p.m. every week. And the key is that, is it the best newsletter in the world? No. Is it always at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday? Yes. And that little that anchor of consistency.
You're going to get reminded every week.
And people habituate to getting it at 5 p.m. And that demonstrates that they have attention to detail. It demonstrates a level of predictability, and all of those things are subtle brand cues.
Absolutely.
Which is that one email once a week is probably better than a big conference one year. Absolutely. That you're then exhausted by and can't replicate.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, without a doubt. And I think you're right. That checking that green-eyed monster is really, really important, because that green-eyed monster can get expensive, can't it?
Oh gosh, I mean, I always say you need to outthink your competition, not outspend them. And I think if you follow big brands or people who are in a different place to you, if you follow them move for move, they'll bankrupt you. I had a jewellery client who sells beautiful handmade jewellery, and they were very enamoured with Pandora and the way that Pandora do their marketing, and said, if you follow Pandora move for move, they will bankrupt you. You have to outthink them. You have to do what they can't. You have to do those human touches. You have to train the people in store and the jewellers, and you have to do what they can't do. Yeah. If you were to put an ad in all the publications, they've got ads, you'll last 2 weeks. So you have to outthink rather than outspend. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the simple fact is that old adage of treat the money as if it's your own when you're in a big corporate.
Yes.
It's said a lot. I don't believe it's it's acted upon as anywhere near as often.
I also think when you're having to think about it more, you come up with better things. So one of the metaphors I use a lot, and I've got a book out at the moment called 101 Ways Customers Are Like Cats. And one of the analogies in there is, imagine, first of all, imagine that you've got the cat, a sexy toy, and it had a ribbon on it. They're more likely to play with the ribbon than the sexy toy. So actually, same is true in marketing. Do you need the most expensive version of the idea that you've had? No, you don't. You just need the one that works for the brain wiring of the people you need to reach. And then if you think about that ribbon, you think about just putting it on the floor and ignoring it, and it's static, then the cat's going to do nothing with it. Yeah, they'll ignore it. Whereas if you dangle it, then they do something with it. And I think what happens a lot in businesses is they create a paper, for example, a really nice, interesting discussion paper, and then they put it on their website. It's like the static ribbon. Play with your toys. So do a little live talking about your paper. Do some videos around it. Do some shorts. Do a webinar around your paper. In what ways are you going to dangle the toy in front of the cat? Yeah. And so for people who have more modest budgets, the way to interpret that is, first of all, you don't need the sexy one. The simple one is fine. And when you do have the simple one, dangle it around. Absolutely. Pick it up and do something with it.
You could say, sweat the asset.
Absolutely. So if you've got a sales team or an account management team, they should be dropping people a line saying, we've recently published this paper. Point number 7 really made me think of that conversation we had the other day.
Absolutely.
So not an email from your MailChimp going out to everyone, an email from an individual to an individual with a point of interest.
Yeah.
And so that is the equivalent of dangling the ribbon.
Absolutely. A colleague I worked with a few years ago, still in touch very often, very much subscribes to that, I saw this and thought of you kind of mentality. He's absolutely brilliant at it. So in store, something that looks great, something that doesn't look so hot, thought you'd want to at least know about.
Oh, it's so important. And I think it's something that smaller businesses can particularly do well. So I think often people are very jealous of, the sexy calculator tool or something that somebody's got. Whereas actually, if all of your people thought, who are 10 individuals that I can drop our latest blog post to with a link, just referencing something that we have in common, that is so much more effective. And I think often particularly in big businesses, there's such a disconnect between sales and marketing that actually they are more than an arm's length away. Yeah. But in small businesses, you do often see that senior leadership or account management might think, well, that's marketing's job. And it's marketing's job to give you the ribbon, It's your job to pick it up and dangle
Well,
it.
it's every function's job to make the
Absolutely.
most of that asset, isn't it?
Pick it up and dangle it.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's interesting because I think a lot of what we've talked about so far is very much business to business.
Yes.
Almost in maybe a services environment. I think there's an awful lot that a lot of our clients are food and drink manufacturers or health and beauty manufacturers. There's an awful lot I think that anyone could learn from your thinking in particular.
I mean, we've
book.
worked with distributors of beauty products, working with high street pharmacies and beauty kind of outlets, and it applies. It applies in any decision when there is a process of considered decision making. So if you draw a line from left to right in your mind, on the left hand side you've got an impulse purchase, a see it, buy it moment. Handbags for me. Don't have to share your impulses with me. You can if you like.
Used to be cars, but I've grown out of that.
And so, and an impulse is relative, right? So when you were a student, I doubt you'd have an impulse to buy. You might have an impulse to buy a car, but you wouldn't have been able to act on it.
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So an impulse purchase is relative. It's also like a default decision. So restocking toilet paper or toothpaste or something, kind of default, see it, buy it, which means that your marketing is awareness and loyalty, and you don't really need a bit in the middle. So if you take that impulse purchase and you continue the line over to the right and think of a considered purchase is where there are moments of pause. And I've got the cat analogy in my head now, and I'm doing puns. So moments of pause with a U-S-E. If someone stops and thinks and could choose not to move forward, you need a marketing tool or technique for every moment of pause so that they stop, think, and choose to move forward.
Yeah.
I love my metaphors. The other way of thinking of that is like the box set binge.
Yes.
So if you imagine your marketing journey as a box set, there's a narrative. You don't want people to miss episodes. You want them to choose to keep watching. So you still split it into episodes: awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, adoption, loyalty. You don't want someone to leapfrog because they miss the narrative. They don't get it. They're not educated properly. They become irritating clients because they don't know how you work and why and what your value is. So if you were to create marketing that makes people want to keep going,
absolutely,
then that's a really powerful customer journey.
Yeah. And apologies, I'm going to mess up the naming convention, but ultimately, that low commitment or sample proposition, sample product, that really resonated a lot with me in the book around proof points are massively important, and you've got lots of proof points, but actually recognizing that there might be a risk aversion there and just helping them to dip their toe into feeling what it's like to work with you.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be free. Sometimes it probably shouldn't be free.
Nope.
But thinking about that risk profile and helping people to make that first leap is...
Yeah, so you're talking about Leak 4, no gateway.
Yes, no gateway, thank you, yes.
And the model you're talking about is an incremental increase from time into data into money. So you provide value for time, then you provide value for time and data. Yep. So we spend more time together, and I tell you a little bit about myself. And then it's time, data, and money. And so if you can create little flows that go time and data, and money as a kind of triangles is the diagram.
Yeah.
Then you will take the most risk averse person on that journey. And I equate that in lots of my talks. I equate that to dating. You don't go, hey, nice to meet you, let's get married.
Yeah.
Say, hey, nice to meet you. Should we spend a bit more time together? Let's go away for a weekend together. Let's get to know each other. So if you were to think about it more as because you're building a long-term relationship here, it's not the the commercial equivalent of a one-night stand that you're after.
Absolutely. So one of the things that is a really vital ingredient when stepping into that great unknown of starting up and running and building a successful business is your network, your supporters, the people that have been there to collaborate with. Who have been the key people that have really helped you keep going when it's got tough, or really inspired you to push on?
It's a great question. It's so important for everybody to surround themselves with good people. I'd say I learn from every single client. So good questions and interesting questions are what keeps it alive and a real vibrant methodology. It's not kind of gathering dust. It gets exercised all the time. And my members club really does that for me. My monthly Q&A, I love it. I love questions from left field. some people who've been really important. So Cheryl Crichton is a long-time collaborator. She was part of the business as I was writing the book. She was the doer to my thinker. Cheryl absolutely was the first person to work with me in businesses actually implementing this methodology, and the book wouldn't exist without those experiences that we had together. Rachel Wheatley she was one of our very first licensees, and again really exercised the material, particularly in the kind of legal and accountancy, those sort of that sort of work, professional services. Thank you, that's the phrase I'm looking for. And there's a gentleman called Ian Price who has been a real mentor to me over the years, and so many. I was lucky enough that Twitter was really genuine when I started out in business, and there are a number of people who were Twitter buddies in that early,
a much smaller community.
2008, 2010. Twitter was a really lovely place to be. I don't think you can say that these days. And there are probably a dozen or so people who I connected with in those early years, who have been pivotal.
And you're still in contact with some?
Still in contact with them, absolutely. Sonia Jefferson, who's the co-author of Valuable Content Marketing, excellent book. Della Hudson, who is an accountant, writer, and speaker, very much still in contact with. And I've been part of mastermind groups and those sorts of things. And I'm an active member of the Professional Speaking Association. And I really value the friendship and mentorship that I get from my speaking colleagues there. Yeah,
fantastic. And I think it's very easy to get focused on, and we talked about this, plugging all of the gaps and making sure everything is green on a scorecard. But actually, if amber and some red is good enough, you're making money, you're doing okay. The value of the network is amazing. I've certainly found,
not least for them to reflect back to you that you're doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt, because you can get in your own head, can't you? In terms of surely I could be going even quicker than I am. I've been absolutely amazed over the last 3 years of people that I thought I might be able to rely on for some moral support and some guidance and some inputs that maybe haven't.
Oh, yes. I've had those as well.
Yeah. But then people who, at some point we'd made a connection, we'd stayed in touch in a really light kind of way, but bumped into each other at industry events. And they've just been out of this world. And one person in particular emailed me, LinkedIn messaged me last night. And it was such a lovely note to receive in response to me. I was just dangling a bit of a carrot in terms of, I think we've been working on something with somebody else that might be useful for you, given you work in a different sort of category. And they jumped straight back on it, and the message was great. And I think we're now going for a bite to eat.
And that's why that little and often is really important.
Yeah.
So if LinkedIn is your primary platform, which in B2B it often is, showing up frequently is so important for just... you're quietly nurturing awareness that you don't know about. I've had clients get back in touch with me after a decade of not actually having spoken in person. I've said, Bri, could you come and do a workshop or whatever? So absolutely, I think your network is probably bigger than you think. If you are seeding it
right
consistently and at intervals.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there will also be times when people let you down. I've had that happen too. I've been very sorely hurt and let down and badly ripped off. I think I don't think there will be a business owner who's had more than a decade in business that hasn't had some of those tough times too.
Absolutely.
And again, I've leaned into my network to reassure myself that it wasn't the way I handled the relationship, or what were the lessons for me to take forward. So that will happen too. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I get lots of people approaching me to say, I've done 20 years in the corporate world. You've gone for it. You've done it. Do you think I could as well? And I'm very sort of clear with it. I'm absolutely not making you a recommendation either way. I can tell you the pros. I can tell you the cons. And I think you're absolutely right to flag, there are sharks out there. And you need to be careful. There absolutely are. But one of the things that I think is really, really interesting is there are so many people out there who are genuinely, for no immediate gain, they might be thinking about a medium-term way to collaborate or ways to work together, but people are really, really prepared to share their experience and share their knowledge.
Yes.
Which maybe in the corporate world, where maybe it's a bit more dog eat dog and there's a lot of politics, and I know a lot of people in corporate roles at the moment, it's quite a tough place to be in a lot of industries. Giving them, some faith that there are good people out there that are prepared to collaborate to see where it goes, not because there's something in it for them immediately.
It's the thing I love about small business.
Yeah.
Is that also the pace of it. You can have a good idea in the morning, you can be doing something about it in the afternoon, which might have taken 6 months in a corporate.
Several sign-offs, yeah.
Yeah. And there's always someone willing to point you in the right direction or to connect you with someone who knows more about that. Or so, ask questions, talk to people, put yourself out there, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'd love to talk to you about is your many and varied emails that I get, having signed up to the mailing list. So we talked off camera about the marathon. We talked about your teaser around, why cats are so similar to clients.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, they're very heartfelt. They're very personal. I think they're great.
Yeah.
And a couple of them had Karen, my wife, and I a bit choked up.
Yeah.
Don't mind admitting. But talk to us about those, because I think they're great.
So I've committed to my own weekly email, so taking my own advice. They're almost weekly.
I would say broadly, but yeah.
There are some times when illness or life, but they're regular enough for people to remember. And they always jump off the watertight topics. So whether that's, little and often, which then I've talked about how, and for context, I'm a pancreatic cancer survivor. I had to rebuild my fitness from zero. And so I went from not being able to walk, to completing the London Marathon. And that's a lesson in consistency, and little and often relates very much back to, principles in the book. And it's interesting. I found it very interesting that, the core principles in the book were the lessons I needed to pick myself back up from illness. And there's some, there's a kind of life's reflection in that, is that the lessons in one part of your life can often be borrowed and taken into another part of your life. And then you will often hear me talking about Mr. the cat. So my constant companion in my work is my cat, Mister, and he gives me lessons on client nurturing every day, that I can.
Does he eat in other neighbours' houses?
Well, he used to, but he's not quite as nimble as he used to be. But we do have a little kitten called Tiger, and he's very much
promiscuous,
part of the neighbourhood. Yes, yeah, he's very active and random. But I'm sure someone could pinch him quite easily if they wanted to. And the same's true, isn't it? You have those loyal clients who have the inertia. And will always curl up on your sofa, and you have those clients who flirt with you, and they're flirting with everyone else too.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are so many lessons. So I'll always bring out something from the book, bring it to life, bring in a client story, bring in my life. And I'm very much an advocate for Pancreatic Cancer UK, and I'm writing a book with the lead hepatobiliary oncologist at the Royal Marsden for pancreatic cancer patients, and that's part of my life. And so I bring that to my material. You get you get 80% of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 20% of me you just don't want to know.
No, genuinely, we both love receiving them. So keep them coming, and we'll forgive you if it's every 10 or 14 days occasionally as well. As an organisation, Sellex is about commercial confidence, and that's about whether you're a sales team member, you're a marketeer. It's having the confidence that you've got the right tools, the right approach, the right opportunities to practice. And obviously all of that comes back down to what's on your development plan, what are you going to learn about, and how you're going to improve yourself. What's on your development plan for 2026?
Oh, it's taking my own medicine, isn't it? It's doing the basics, doing them well, keeping consistent. I'm 6 years out from my pancreatic cancer diagnosis. In the first 5 years, I have a 75% chance of recurrence, which would have been considered terminal. I probably have about a 25% chance of recurrence at the moment. And so really for me, this year is about steady. And I've simplified my life quite considerably. So at diagnosis, there were 14 people in the business. This year, I have simplified it right down to just me and a couple of freelancers when I need them. And that's, I think, sensibly, the next 12 months or so is just looking after and feeding myself. And then there are some conversations ongoing about that are coming back to the original dream for Watertight, which was to create a software tool, which would help you to implement Watertight in a really dynamic way. And that dream hasn't gone away. The likelihood of me getting investment for it has, because I'm like the walking definition of founder risk with my diagnosis. So I need to think more creatively about how that dream might happen, and there are conversations in play. So, there might well be an AI tool available to people. It'd be a bit like having Bryony in their pocket.
Fantastic.
So that's coming.
That's really interesting.
And my members club keeps me very busy. So I have a monthly members club where they have access to the vaults and my resources. And we get together for a co-working day each month and a Q&A each month. And then I have a series of coaching clients who are typically MDs of smaller businesses who really want to get on top of marketing. Chap I was speaking to this morning is the MD of a manufacturing company, kind of several million turnover manufacturer, and he really wants to get on top of marketing before recruiting the first marketer into the business, so that he can lead that properly. And I typically do a MD mentoring over about 12 months. And I will have 2 or 3 of those on the go at any one time. And then projects that interest me. So.
Many and varied.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
But it's very much about, if anything, I have to pin myself down a bit this year. I have to try to put a pin in some of my ambition. I'm not sure I've quite caught up with the fact that I don't have the capacity that I used to have. And so I find that very frustrating. But I need to adjust to a different level of capacity and some new ways of working that will allow me to return to some of the dreams that I had before I got ill.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish you every success with that. And I suppose it just leaves me to say thank you so much for coming to meet us. I say long-term fan of the book. Once Stephen recommended it to me, it's been a huge help to us. It's just been brilliant to spend some time chatting to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that the book continues to inspire and be useful to people, the decade on from writing it.
Absolutely.
And I hope that the Cats book will also entertain and educate.
Well, I've made a quick miss, so let's go back slightly. When is a release date?
26th of January. So when this goes out,
it will just be out.
It will just be brand new, hot off the press. And it's almost the diametric opposite of the Watertight book. The Watertight book is quite long, and it's very detailed and it's comprehensive, and it's got diagrams and tables and all of those good things. Whereas the Cats book has all the core principles, but it's much more like reading a story.
Great.
And so there are 2 different lenses on the same wisdom.
Fantastic. Great. Well, look, what we'll do in the notes that go with the podcast and when we publicise it on LinkedIn, we'll make sure we point people in the direction of making a purchase.
Fabulous.
Thanks again, Bryony. Cheers.